What is going on, everybody? ZyoniK here, and in today's video we are going to be team building for the Premier Cup. If you guys haven't heard already, the Premier Cup is coming to Go Battle League on Monday alongside normal Master League. Now the Premier Cup is going to be banning mythical and legendary Pokemon in the Master League, which is fantastic because a lot of us don't have the best IV or powered up legendaries that are going to be dominant in that league. So the Premier Cup is a fantastic way for us to compete. Now we are going to be building a lot of different teams today, so you guys can head down to the comments. I'm going to have pinned comments targeting basically during the video specific Pokemon that we're building around. So there's going to be, I think, about 10 to 12 teams that we build and showcase for you here. So let me know which team is your guys' favorite. What are you guys looking forward to using the most? But let's go ahead and get right into the video. Now, when it comes to team building, there's a philosophy I like to have when I build my own teams, and that is going to be a lead, a cover, and a safe swap. Whatever we lead with in Pokemon Go PvP, we always want to have protection for in the back. Now, the cover is going to be a hard protection for our lead. So, for example, if we lead a Dragonite, which is going to be very weak to Togekiss, we could have Metagross as our hard cover because it can beat that Togekiss. Now, because of how these fights happen, we can't always just bring in our hard cover. If we lead Dragonite and our opponent leads Togekiss, you just can't bring in Metagross because they'll take that Togekiss and swap in another hard cover for you. So what you need is what is called a safe swap. These safe swaps provide a great transition, allowing you to flip the mid game and potentially line up Metagross versus Togekiss, or get tons of shields from your opponent so that you have shield advantage on your side. Now, as we build these teams, the far left is going to be the lead, the middle is going to be the cover, and the right is going to be the safe switch. Now, starting things off, we have a Togekiss lead team. So Togekiss, being very strong in the meta, is going to be weak to probably one of the biggest things is going to be Metagross, which is why we have Swampert as a cover there. Fantastic cover, can beat the Metagross, can beat a lot of the other tanks that can beat Togekiss. And then we have Metagross as the safe swap. It does very well when ahead on energy. Overall coverage, fantastic, bulk, pretty solid. Safety, not the greatest, but it relies on our Metagross being able to flip the fight, which is definitely going to be strong. And consistency is really good. As we can see from the breakdown, has a lot of great coverages. There's really nothing here besides Milotic there that can beat this whole team, but Milotic is completely manageable from this team. And as we go down to our top counters, Milotic is the one Pokemon that can beat all of these Pokemon, but that is only in specific situations. I'm going to take one for example. Let's say they lead Milotic into our Togekiss. We can win the 1 and 2 shield. Milotic only wins that 1 shield. If we go farther in, Charm is going to be doing more damage, which is why I said this fight is very, very manageable. So having Togekiss, Swampert, and Metagross, I think is going to be a solid start. Next up, we have a Dragonite lead team. So we have Dragonite, Metagross, and Milotic. Dragonite has a lot of great coverage on the meta, everyone. Look at all those X's. It can beat a lot of stuff, but its biggest weaknesses are going to be Togekiss and Metagross, which is why we have Metagross and Milotic here in the back. Both Metagross and Milotic can handle the Togekiss, but Milotic has to be ahead on energy or be in the zero shield situation. Metagross, as well, we know it can handle that Togekiss. And then we have the mirror match, and then Milotic can beat Metagross as well. Now, this team, very surprisingly, coverage A, bulk A, safety C, but consistency A as well. I think it's really strong, but it has one of the greatest ratings I've ever seen in a team of 3, and that's going to be 462 on the meta. That is incredibly strong. For those of you who compete in the Silph Arena, you know that a 462 is like mind-blowing. Like, how did we even get to that? Now, I think this team is very, very strong. Just to let you guys know, there's nothing that can single-handedly wipe out this team, which is great. So we may see a lot of people running this team. Definitely strong. A lot of spice, right? Running Dragonite and Metagross is meta core, but then Milotic, I think, is awesome to bring to this team. Next up, we have a Rhyperior lead team. Rhyperior being fantastic at handling that Metagross, which is why we have Togekiss as a cover. Rhyperior going to be very weak to those fighters as well, which is where Togekiss comes in. And then we have Gyarados on the safe swap. So as you guys can see here, Rhyperior being weak to basically like Dragonite, Garchomp, things like that. Togekiss can handle those very, very well, and Gyarados can pseudo handle those as well, and especially when ahead on energy, Gyarados can put a lot of pressure on the meta. Now, as we can see, some big counters are going to be a Mamoswine and a Milotic. Now, that can be handled, like we know with Gyarados. Dragon Breath going to do a lot of damage. Waterfall and Surf are not going to do a lot against that if Milotic decides to stay in, and then Togekiss as well can handle that, and I think Mamoswine's going to be manageable as well. Overall, team's pretty solid, so yeah. Rhyperior team. Now here we have a Metagross lead team. Metagross being very solid on the meta. We want to protect it with that Dragonite, which is fantastic. On top of that, we want to try to be catching those Charmers, so Togekiss and Gardevoir, because as long as we can take that out, Dragonite can run free on a lot of the meta, which is why we also have Snorlax as a safe swap to hopefully draw out that Togekiss if we lose lead with Metagross. Now this team's coverage, bulk, safety, and consistency is very solid, as we can see here. Some of those big losses being maybe Garchomp or Swampert, we can handle that with the Pokemon in the back with Dragonite and Snorlax. Overall, there's nothing in the meta that can run through this whole team by itself. Maybe a Garchomp who has 2 shields and this whole team has no shields, but outside of that, we have great coverages against everything. Dragonite does really well in this meta, which is why we need that Metagross to hard stop that Togekiss. Next up, we have a Garchomp lead team. I think this team is going to be very strong, going to be one of my favorite ones to run. We have Garchomp, Metagross, and Snorlax. Garchomp's biggest weakness is going to be basically other dragons or the Charmers, right? So we have Metagross and Snorlax there for that. Coverage, bulk, safety, and consistency you guys see is very, very solid. This team has a lot of great matchups. On the lead, Garchomp does not do well against Togekiss or Gyarados, and it can handle that Dragonite if it can land the Outrage, but that's why we have Metagross and Snorlax in the back. Now, Gyarados does well against this whole team, but again, completely manageable as it's not hard losses. Next up, we have a Magnezone team, somewhat similar to that Metagross team that we saw, but Magnezone having similar coverages, just a different take on it. We have Dragonite and Milotic behind it. Coverage, bulk, and consistency is pretty solid. Safety is not that great because it definitely relies on us flipping matches and lining these Pokemon up. So this may not be the best team, but I think it definitely looks like a lot of fun, has a lot of potential, and there's nothing that can completely run through this team. Magnezone, I think, is going to be a unique and diverse pick for the Premier Cup, and we can handle anything that's really thrown at us. Next up, we have a Snorlax lead team. Now, Snorlax being that normal typing is going to be taking a lot of damage from those fighters that we may see in the meta, which is why we have Togekiss and Metagross behind it. Togekiss being the hard counter, Metagross being the safe switch here. Coverage, bulk, safety, and consistency, very, very solid, as we can see right there. A lot of great matchups going across the board here. Now, our biggest weaknesses are going to be Milotic and Rhyperior, but again, completely manageable with this team. If you land a Meteor Mash on Rhyperior, it's going to do massive damage. Togekiss can win out in the 1 and 2 shield against Milotic, so I think this team is very manageable, very consistent, very bulky. Next up, we have a Mamoswine team, so similar to the Rhyperior team where we have Togekiss and Gyarados as protection because of maybe those Swamperts, maybe those fighters. Togekiss and Gyarados can provide a lot of great protection, Gyarados being that safe switch option. Now against the meta, this team has fantastic coverages, as we can see, but the biggest weakness that we have is going to be a Milotic and a Chandelure. Now Chandelure, I don't think we'll see any kind of use of that Pokemon, but Milotic, again, can be handled by the Gyarados, can be handled by the Togekiss the deeper you go into shields, but I think this team is very strong, has a lot of great matchups, and Mamoswine's energy, remember, can handle a lot of the meta core that we see because of its moveset, so this team could be very dangerous. And finally, we have a Gyarados lead team, so Gyarados being a very strong generalist on the meta, we are also bringing Metagross and Snorlax, which are fantastic as well, and this team has the best overall rating from coverage, bulk, safety, and consistency that I've been able to see. I'm sure there are other teams that provide this same score, but this is fantastic coverage. It doesn't look like that much, but trust me, it's there. This team is strong. Again, weak to Milotic and Rhyperior, but those can be completely handled with these guys. These are not hard coverage losses, but overall I think it's very consistent, very strong, and probably relatively easy to build considering that you may already have Metagross and Gyarados, and you might have Snorlax as well, which would be fantastic, so I'm definitely looking forward to trying this team. And finally, we have the Gengar team. Now, Gengar, I think, is going to be best utilized either as a closer with shield advantage or as a safe switch to get shields from your opponent. If you're utilizing it as a safe switch, I think Shadow Ball Focus Blast might be the best call because you want to punish them not shielding, or you want to get those shields and rely on Dragonite and Metagross to carry the rest of the game with shield advantage. Now overall, the coverage and consistency is great, but the bulk and safety is not that good. That's because of Gengar's vulnerability to a lot of Pokemon, but again, his goal is to punch through, get those shields, or basically near one-shot a lot of the meta. As we're scrolling through here, we see it has a lot of great coverage, and again, nothing can really surprise us. Dragonite can beat that Snorlax, and if you swap into Gengar, maybe you're facing off against a Togekiss, they bring in the Snorlax. Remember, we have Focus Blast to basically one-shot it, which is why this potentially could be a super strong team. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought about those teams, which Pokemon and which teams are you guys most looking forward to using. I think there's a lot of great variety that we can do here. Yes, a lot of these teams did consist of Snorlax, Metagross, Togekiss, but I think that is due to the fact of how strong they are, and Metagross provides a lot of coverage both on a lead, a cover, or a safe swap option, which is why it made it onto a lot of teams. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to run with Metagross. You could build other teams like we did today. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and like always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.